Well, that was quite the Tuesday. And I'm going to be totally honest, I did not expect Youngkin to be actually a winner on that night. But, well, here we are. The polls had him behind for a while, yet he actually pulled through. He beat McAuliffe. So, I didn't expect that, obviously. And I wanted to investigate why. Because when I looked at the partisan map, I mean, look at this. Like, these are the counties that flipped, or I guess changed more Republican. And every single one, except for one, like, minuscule little county, went more red. Like, that is a big shift. Especially in a state that had been voting in Democrats for, like, a while at this point and been getting more and more blue. This is massive. And I really did predict it. If you've gone on my channel, you could see that. So, I guess let's take you on the journey that I had while researching this, and I guess through my process of looking through my earlier videos and what I had started to miss. So earlier on, we had these ads. I mean, I covered one in my own video. I side note, I love that I could start referencing my own videos, but we had the ad from Youngkin, which criticized Terry McAuliffe for toasting Trump or whatever. I debunked it, all right? It was garbage. But, well, lo and behold, I guess maybe it was the area I lived in, or I guess this ad wasn't, like, heavily televised or whatever. I didn't see it for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure why. But this ad, which I'll play soon, I missed this. This is a very effective ad.
It's not your imagination. Consumer prices are going up. And to make matters worse, Virginia is only one of 13 states to tax groceries. As governor, I will eliminate Virginia's grocery tax. Career politicians will call it radical, but to me, it's just common sense. Because saving a little extra on milk and bread and all of this, it adds up. It's time to make it a little easier to live, work, and raise a family here in Virginia.
Well, that was a really effective political ad. Like, that's not even sarcastic. Legitimately really good. Voters, I mean, everyone can see that, hey, I can see how this could help me. It's a simple thing to implement, and the wording on it, just everything about it, just really good. Legitimately a great political ad. Now, as to whether or not a grocery tax is actually a good idea or not, I've read different things about it. I mean, on one hand, the idea of taxing, like, unhealthy foods in order to incentivize healthier living, it's an interesting idea. I mean, obesity is a really big problem, so trying to do something about that's not a terrible measure. But, I mean, the reason they're eating those foods is because they're more expensive, and if healthy foods still remain expensive, it kind of seems like you're, like, disproportionately impacting them, which I've also read that, so it's complicated. It really is. But it's still something where I could totally understand why someone would think it's just a good idea to just get rid of their grocery tax. And even these states that exempt it, they do actually still have those exemptions for those unhealthy foods. So I could totally understand wanting to get rid of that. I actually think that it's probably a decent idea, which is why it surprised me that Terry McAuliffe, at least from what I could see, gave absolutely no mention of this at all. I don't know why, but what a political missed opportunity. And this actually kind of goes back to circle on my point as a whole. Like, this ad, the common sense ad here, is really good. And when you compare that to the ads he had been making before, you could tell he learned. He learned his lesson and actually, like, applied himself, and it worked for him. It really does. Terry McAuliffe, meanwhile, his strategy kind of started to change in the opposite direction and was focusing more on trying to tie Youngkin to Trump, which it kind of failed. It really failed. Like, it's not really that accurate. I mean, you could make the criticism that you're bringing in national politics to a local level, which doesn't really work too well. But I feel like the biggest thing is that Glenn Youngkin is more moderate than what he was suggesting, which Yeah, that's a really big swing and a miss. So focusing so much on that was just not a good idea. Let's change gears a little bit away from just like campaigning itself and more to campaign issues, and then finally onto what really started to change things and why I actually think that Youngkin really won. And critical race theory, I thought this was like a really big thing. I mean, it was mentioned in debates. It's something that I hear a lot about. It's in school boards and stuff. But the article here actually talks about how it might not be as big as I thought it was. I mean, if you look at exit poll data, and I mean, theoretically, exit poll data is actually not great because you have the benefit of hindsight, so it kind of influences your data collection. And yeah, I guess that kind of makes more sense. But really, the big thing that I think happened, and I mean, this article mentions it as well, is unpopular incumbent president. Yeah, I think that this is a much, much larger indicator for why Terry McAuliffe lost and why Glenn Youngkin won. So let's get into that and why I think this is. I mean, the first thing that I've seen is the idea that he had never really gotten anything done. Bam, infrastructure bill. It did actually pass. So, I mean, that's great, but that also happened after the Virginia elections. So that idea of just like, they had pretty much an entire year at this point. I mean, yeah. What? It's literally been a year since the Biden and I guess the Democratic majority had been elected, and it took them this long to get like one of the big things passed, the infrastructure bill. So yeah, that idea that like they weren't really accomplishing anything in politics, understandable, but at this point it's kind of been smashed. So we'll see how this starts affecting these numbers, but I mean, for now, it definitely is a part of it. And the other thing that I've heard is COVID-19. It's still around. Kind of sick of it, but yeah, it's just hasn't gone away yet. And because I guess Biden and a lot of Democrats campaigned on the fact that, you know, Trump was horrific with COVID and had led us to the situation where they are, then people are upset that COVID's still such a large problem, which that's a frustrating one, if I'm going to be honest. I'll look into it a little bit more later, but I had already mentioned it in that debate analysis part 3, or part 1. It's in there somewhere. That it's unvaccinated people primarily. Like, overwhelmingly. So, what can you really do at that point other than mandates? And that was also part of the election. But the fact that people still have to wear masks, and that COVID's still, like, flaring up, and that people are still dying, that's definitely a big stain on it. And another one that I've seen was the Afghanistan fallout and the pullout and the Taliban takeover. I mean, I've seen people contribute this to Joe Biden's unpopularity because Americans died and the government fell and Taliban came in, and obviously the Taliban are awful. No one's doubting that. Well, no one's doubting that. So, yeah, I guess that could reflect poorly on Biden, but hey, I did another video about why that's not entirely accurate to blame it all on him. I love that I'm at this point where I can start just referencing my own videos, but it is true that this isn't entirely allowed to be blamed on him. And then the final thing I'll talk about, and another gigantic thing, gas. Gas prices have been rising steadily. And it seems like a lot of people also want to pin the blame on the administration in charge. Because, hey, look, it was low under Trump, and then it's high under Biden. But can you really blame this on him? Well, not really. There's a lot of reasons for this. One is something you've probably heard about, and that's the global supply chain issues that have been reflecting everywhere, and in oil production in the Gulf of Mexico by hurricanes. Oh, yeah. It's crazy that climate change is impacting and making larger storms. That's crazy, but yeah, that was a big part of it. There's that fuel pipeline hack that was earlier this year that disrupted it. those kinds of problems have absolutely affected gas prices. There's not too much you can do about that. Like individually, those are part of much larger problems like cybercrime and climate change, as I mentioned. So yeah, that's one part of it. And the other one is simple supply and demand. It's no secret that during the pandemic, people went out less, so people drove less. So prices went down. And now that people are driving again, prices are going to start rising again as demand increases. That's just a really simple thing. But here we are. And then, yeah, low production. So there's a few reasons, but still, largely, this isn't really something that Biden can control for, but it's still pinned the blame on him. All right, let's start bringing this home and talk about some implications from this for future elections. One thing is, I mean, also the reason why McAuliffe's advertising was so ineffective is that Youngkin actually was more moderate than I mean, you could tell from my debates, or I guess the debate review, but also, like, yeah, he's just more moderate than I was expecting, or I guess most voters are expecting. And apparently that's what you need to do in order to start winning elections. Yeah, this is probably going to be one of the larger like implications from this. But like Youngkin even said that like calling or like pledging allegiance to the flag carried at January 6th rally being wrong, like actually like breaking away a bit from like the shadow of Trump. That seems to be the way that Republicans are going to have to start heading if they want to win elections, because it works. So yeah, I mean, we'll see who wants to do that, because there are still a lot of people that like respect Trump, but clearly just doing everything that or like associating heavily with him would not have won the election. Doing what he did here, that did. And while that Fox article did talk about how critical race theory wasn't like huge, I don't know if I would say that it does nothing, because I mean, looking through, it's everywhere in the news and little student council things, just everywhere. It's a really, really big thing. And I do understand that there's definitely other reasons. I mean, the fact that Joe Biden's unpopular, like, it's definitely not the largest reason, but it absolutely is. And it goes into the whole, I guess, my theory, which is a culture war. Now, let me go on a little bit of a tangent, I guess. It's related, but yeah. 69% of Americans believe in climate change, right? And that's happening. But if you break that down more, it's Republicans are less likely to believe that, while Democrats are more likely to believe that, more likely to believe that something should be done about that. And some people, or at least the narrative I had heard, was this is because of like propaganda and the fact that like shell companies and whatever, they knew, therefore like they funded that, and that's why people don't believe in it. However, I don't know how much I buy into that. And here's where I relate again, because vaccines are another topic that are broken up by culture, or I guess by political leaning, so therefore it's part of the culture war. Like, I don't know any company that would possibly want their workers to get sick or die. That's just not something that it just is inherent like to the interests of a factory owner or like a business owner, right? So that's just, for me, what that seems to mean is that it's more like culture war. Like I said, I think that that's what these issues ultimately tied down or are related to. Therefore, the suggestion that I would have, or what seems to be the big thing, is that Democrats need some kind of, if not counter narrative, they need some kind of way to respond to it. Because clearly, doing nothing or just like trying to say that it doesn't exist or it's not a problem, it doesn't work. There's got to be some kind of narrative that they set, or counter narrative, something like that. And yeah, if they don't do that, then you're going to get another Virginia. And we're going to have more maps that look like this.